The Trump administration is on a mission to make shipbuilding great again. Now, before anybody gets upset, I just want to clarify that despite its recent rebranding, this is a bipartisan effort that actually dates back to the Biden administration. So, newsflash, everyone agrees that this is a good idea. How often do we hear that? The current effort to save U.S. shipbuilding started during the Biden administration. In the spring of 2024, we got the findings and recommendations of a U.S. Trade Representative Section 301 investigation into whether or not China is engaged in anti-competitive practices. This release led to the Ships for America Act, introduced by a combination of Democratic and Republican senators and Democratic and Republican congressmen. When both sides of the aisle agree, the problem must be huge. And in the case of U.S. shipbuilding capabilities, it is gargantuan. Ambassador Catherine Tai, she was the U.S. trade representative under the Biden administration, made this problem clear in no uncertain terms. She said, quote, "Today, the U.S. ranks 19th in the world in commercial shipbuilding, and we build less than 5 ships each year, while the PRC, or People's Republic of China, is building more than 1,700 ships. In 1975, the United States ranked number 1, and we were building more than 70 ships a year. There are currently around 80 U.S. flagged ships involved in international commerce. Now that's compared to 5,500 Chinese flagged vessels. Now, the connection between military shipbuilding and commercial shipbuilding is too strong to ignore, and the two sectors are very closely linked. So in this episode of Art of Supply, I will take you through the downfall of U.S. shipbuilding from the peak in the 1970s to where we stand today, which is basically the bottom. We'll talk about China's strategy for combining their military and commercial shipbuilding capabilities and how that approach has helped them build a dominant global position. And we'll think through some of the many moving pieces that will have to fall into place before the U.S. can get on a better path. Now, in some cases, the numbers tell the story all by themselves, and this is definitely one of those cases. According to the international law firm Troutman Pepper Locke, in 1951, the United States had more than 1,200 large, privately owned merchant vessels. Today, there are less than 180. That's a drop of over 85% over the last 75 years. American shipbuilders are currently building between 5 and 8 large commercial ships a year. Now, as we started out, let's compare that to China. Chinese shipbuilders are responsible for over half of global market share. And according to the U.S. Navy's own data, China has 232 times the shipbuilding capacity of the United States. So while the U.S. produced, let's give them upper edge credit, 8 vessels in 2023, China produced over 1,000. And they did it at a fraction of the cost we typically see domestically. All of those numbers come together and set the stage for the Trump executive order titled Restoring America's Maritime Dominance. To quote that order, recent data shows that the United States constructs less than 1% of commercial ships globally, while the People's Republic of China is responsible for producing approximately half. This order looks to do a few key things, including incentivizing private investment in domestic shipbuilding capabilities, as well as the supply chains that will need to support them, building back up the associated labor force, and disincentivizing companies and even countries from using Chinese-built vessels to transport their goods by using fees, some of which might even be retroactive. The various departments and agencies named in the executive order have until November 5th of this year to respond with a cohesive maritime action plan. Now, speaking of cohesive, one of the key challenges associated with solving this problem is that America has no meaningful maritime strategy. Don't trust me on that. That's according to James Holmes, writing for the National Interest. He's the J.C. Wiley Chair of Maritime Strategy at the Naval War College and a faculty fellow at the University of Georgia School of Public and International Affairs. He went on to write that, quote, the Departments of State, Defense, Commerce, Labor, Transportation, Homeland Security, and even education are part of efforts at sea, as there are the U.S. Trade Representative and the Office of Management and Budget. None of these agencies or cabinet departments stands above the others, holding the power to coordinate actions relating to the sea. The Secretary of the Navy is not in charge of maritime strategy, nor is the Secretary of Defense, or anyone else. So what that boils down to is that no one is in charge of this. No wonder we don't have a strategy. Having no one in charge is not a good way to get things done in the government or anywhere else. And of course, government acquisitions have a way of being uniquely complicated in other ways as well. According to Reuters, the United States has lost global market share, not just because of high costs, but also because we have such complex processes and regulations. It's just too hard to build ships here. To that point, there is a whole section 15, if you're reading along at home, of Trump's executive order that is dedicated to procurement efficiency. It calls for better forecasting of demand infrastructure, materials, and workforce. Reforms that would change staff structure and introduce innovative new acquisition strategies. It would also notably reduce the layers of approval required to move the acquisition process along, making decisions simpler and preventing spec changes to ship designs that often slow down the whole process. There's even a call for spec rationalization, eliminating what are characterized as, quote, excessive requirements. To summarize in short, let's get a move on, people. We need to get this going. Now, if the U.S. shipbuilding approval process is somewhere between slow and slower, China's has been accelerating. They have strategically designed and built up their capabilities since the 1990s. According to an article for the Center for Strategic and International Studies, quote, this expansion is largely facilitated by China's extensive network of dual-use shipyards, which simultaneously produce both commercial vessels and advanced warships. China describes this approach as a military-civil fusion strategy. It allows them to execute against economic and national security plans, to drive progress in the civilian and military sectors at the same time. They can spread their fixed costs across both sectors, they can allocate resources as needed, and they can share technological advancements. Now, this also means that any and all foreign investment in Chinese-built ships, either directly or indirectly, funds their military shipbuilding capabilities. And any technologies those companies buying ships share for the sake of commercial shipbuilding are probably finding their way into military ships too. I never would have thought about it this way, but there are tight connections between a country's investment in their ocean-going military might and their commercial shipbuilding capabilities. China figured that out, and they are reaping the benefits. I am definitely not suggesting that the US government get involved in commercial shipbuilding, but right now there seems to be a push in the other direction. Actually, maybe a better way to describe it is as a pull. There's a pull to bring private investment into military shipbuilding, something like we saw with BlackRock and the ports nearest to the Panama Canal. All of this will have to be worked out as a public-private partnership in order to work. You can't force companies to do things or investors to put in money with an executive order. But the reality is, we can't deny the connection between the supply chain and national defense, and that's true in more ways than one. Now, while the United States is figuring all of this out, China continues to add to their lead. In early August, the two largest Chinese shipbuilding companies announced that they are merging into one. On day one, they will have 17% of the global market share in their pocket. This is a $16 billion merger. Both companies are state controlled, and the resulting entity, which will be named China State Shipbuilding, or CSSC, will be the world's largest shipbuilder. Ironically, these two companies were originally part of the same organization, but they were split up in 1999 to increase competition. Now, these days, the trend is towards consolidation, especially between commercial and military needs. So rather than trying to spur competition within China, apparently the plan is to continue dominating global markets, competing on the world stage instead. And it's working. China's largest state-owned shipbuilder built more commercial vessels by tonnage last year than the entire United States shipbuilding industry has built since the end of World War II. That's 80 years worth of tonnage built in just one. And this advantage extends into other areas of supply chain infrastructure as well. According to MarineLink, 0%, not even rounding, 0% of the shipping containers used to move goods around the world are built by the United States. China, 96%. Again, 0 of the ship-to-shore cranes used in the United States are built domestically, compared to 80% built in China. The United States isn't the only player in this industry. As we heard from the U.S. Trade Representative, the U.S. ranks 19th. So who else is involved between China and the United States? Well, as it would seem, Japan and South Korea. And the U.S. pushback on China is creating a unique opportunity for them to increase their market share. Both of these countries have historically been leaders in the shipbuilding industry, but they have also struggled to compete with China. Their joint market share has declined from 74% in 2000 to 42% in 2024. Now, shipbuilding is an expensive hobby. What's that old expression? Having a friend with a boat is better than owning a boat. That strategy was fun for the US while it lasted, I guess, but it didn't leave us in a secure place militarily or for the sake of moving ocean freight. And that's absolutely critical given the global nature of today's supply chains. Now we need warships as well as container ships and bulk cargo ships, and we need them pronto. In their reporting on this topic, Supply Chain Dive quoted Worldwide Shipping Council President and CEO Joe Kramek. He said, quote, "The U.S. Trade Representative is proposing a requirement that 1% of U.S. exports be carried on U.S.-built ships, and that would climb to 15% after 7 years. But that provision would be difficult to comply with because those U.S.-built ships don't exist, and neither does the capacity to build them, at least within the given time frame." Given those facts, maybe it is no surprise then that the labor unions have weighed on this debate as well. The United Steelworkers led a coalition of labor organizations that filed the Section 301 petition with the U.S. Trade Representative. So that's what started all of this in 2024. Not a recognition or concern that we're behind, not a change of administration. It was labor's concern about jobs. And them filing that petition eventually led to the Ships for America Act and then to restoring America's maritime dominance, the Trump executive order. We have a long way to go and a short time to get there. We also don't have the workforce required to make all of this happen. Now, I mentioned the procurement or acquisition efficiency proposals that are included in the current EO. If the goal is really to build back fast and efficiently with minimal red tape and delays, then maybe this is a question of build versus buy, where buying from the right trading partners would be a much better way to achieve our short-term objective of being less dependent on China for seagoing capacity, and then working back towards maritime dominance on a slightly longer but more realistic timeframe.